This is LeetCode count vowel strings and ranges. And in this question, we have an array of words like this one. And we also are given an input queries. And basically, we have to find how many words there are in the range for each query where the word begins and ends with the vowel. For example, this 0, 2 means we want to get the words from 0, 1, and 2 and find how many of these words start and end with a vowel. In this case, it's 2 because A, and E here. Okay, first thing we can do is basically convert the words array to an array of numbers instead, where 1 represents if it starts and ends with a vowel, and 0 represents if it doesn't. And now we can do the queries on this. It makes it easier so we don't have to recalculate every time if a word starts and ends with a vowel. So for example, now we go from 0 to 2. So we just say, okay, sum up 0 to 2. In this case, it's 2. Then we do our next query from 1 to 4, and this is 3. And then we're going to do 1 to 1, which is just this one. Now, what you'll notice here is that we are going to be recalculating the query each time. You can see that these two queries actually share a little bit of a range here. And so we're recalculating every single time. So the time complexity is words length and queries length multiplied. Obviously, this is not an acceptable time complexity. So if we break the queries down, we have the query from 0 to 2 is actually equal to word at 0 plus word at 1 plus word at 2. And the query from 1 to 4 is equal to this. And you'll notice that they share a portion of the query. And so we don't want to recalculate that every single time that we do a query. So you'll notice that this lends itself very well to dynamic programming because we can reuse parts of what we've already calculated. So what we want to do is calculate the prefix sum of the array. We're just going to take the sum of what we've seen so far. So at index 0, the sum is just going to be this, 1. At index 1, it's going to be the previous sum plus whatever is at our current index. So that's 1 still. It's going to be the previous sum plus the element at the current index. That's 2. Then we add another 1. Then we add another 1. So this is the prefix sum array that we have here. And we can use this to make our queries much faster and actually in O of 1 time. So for example, from 0 to 2, really all we need to do is take the prefix sum at the right, which is going to be 2, minus the prefix sum of 1 to the left of 0. Now in this case, there is a negative 1 in the prefix sum, so we don't need this part. Now for our other query, 1 to 4, this is equal to the prefix sum at 4 minus the prefix sum at 0. So if you imagine how this works, it's basically this. This sum is what we want. And the way to get that sum using our prefix sum is to get this value minus this value. It's basically the sum here minus the sum from before we started in our query range. And the time complexity is much, much better because now we're just going through words length plus queries length, because we have to go through the words once to calculate the prefix sum, and then we have to go through all the queries once. And each iteration of the query is just O of 1 time. And in terms of space complexity, it's just O of words length, because we have that extra prefix sum array, which is the same length as the words. Now, before we get to the code, if you found that helpful so far, please give a like and a subscribe, and let's get to the code. Okay, first we're going to create our prefix sum array, and we're actually going to initialize it with 0, and this is going to indicate that when we start out, there's no sum, right? Now we define our sum, and we're going to use an underscore just to prevent it from using a keyword in Python. Now for word in words, we're going to add to our sum just 1 if the word is a vowel string. And let's define our own function for this. So we're going to create a function, and it's going to be isVowelString. It's going to take in a word, and it'll return if the word at 0 is in A, E, I, O, U, and the word's last character, which is word at -1, is in A, E, I, O, U. If it's a vowel string, we return 1. Otherwise, we return 0, and we just add that to sum. Then we just add this current sum to prefix sum. And now we have our prefix sum. Now we have our output, and we're going to go through each query in queries, and now we'll append the sum to output. So it's prefix sum at query at 1. Now, because we have that 0 in the beginning of our prefix sum from here, we need to add 1 to the right side of the query to get the correct index. And then we just subtract prefix sum query at 0. And this prefix sum at 0 is just the left side of the query. And this will be the correct index because, again, the prefix sum array is shifted over by 1. And we want to get the element to the left of the query. And then at the very end, we just return output. And I had one small mistake here, and we need to append to the prefix sum. All right, and that's the right answer, and it's faster than 100% of Python online submissions, probably because there aren't that many submissions yet. So again, if you found that helpful, please give a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you next time.